This episode is sponsored by Audible. Get a free audiobook of your choice that you get to keep with their free trial. You can learn more at lutherancartographer.com/audible. The Lutheran Cartographer, Episode 63. Welcome to the Lutheran Cartographer, the podcast where we explore what it's like to be Lutheran in different places. I'm your host, Nicholas Weber. Today we are going to Hillsborough, Oregon to talk to Pastor Grant Knepper of Zion Lutheran Church. Pastor Knepper, welcome to the show.
Thanks. It's good to be here.
Good to have you. Help orient our listeners geographically. Where exactly is Hillsborough in Oregon?
We are one of the western suburbs of Portland, so we're basically in the Portland metropolitan area. We are the last stop on the light rail for the MAX. It ends in Hillsborough.
Okay. So how far outside of Portland is it exactly then?
Depending on where in Portland you're trying to go, we're only about 12 miles out of, say, the Pearl District, northwest Portland, and that area of town. Further out, if you're trying to go to, say, North Portland or Northeast Portland or southwest or southeast, because we're on the western side of the river, if that helps.
Okay, that is helpful. And
We're split by the river.
For our listeners that aren't as familiar with Oregon, where is Portland in Oregon?
Northern part of the state on the western side, right under Vancouver, Washington. So Portland, Vancouver area is kind of one big metropolitan area. Then Washington, Oregon are split by the Columbia River. And then the Willamette River further splits Portland between east and west.
I see.
So for new people, it can be a very frustrating place to drive if you don't know how to get across the rivers.
Definitely, yeah. Most listeners know I'm from the Seattle area, and for me, it's about a 3-hour drive south to get to Portland and to Hillsborough. So tell us a little bit more about yourself, Pastor Knepper. What's your background, and how did you end up in Hillsborough?
I grew up as an Army brat, so I've lived all over the States, in Europe a couple times, and ended up in college at Seattle Pacific University, obviously in Seattle, from the name. Was a Chinese linguist in the Army, and after that I became a Lutheran the really old-fashioned way. I got engaged to a Lutheran. And then the pastor up there was, at the time, he's since retired, it was Ernie Lassen at Messiah Lutheran in Seattle, and he's kind of a sneaky guy. And he said, if you want to understand your bride, you should really take our adult information course. Not that you're going to join, but just to understand where she's coming from. And so I did that, and then all of a sudden, one day I woke up married and in Greek in Fort Wayne.
Excellent. How did I end up here in Fort Wayne? All right. So then give us a little more about your travels. How did you go from Fort Wayne to Hillsborough? Did you take a crawl directly to Hillsborough, or have you served other parishes as well?
Yeah, my first call was to Faith Lutheran Church in Tucson, Arizona, in the desert. I was at that time they had 3 pastors, and I was like the newest, youngest guy there. And then after my time there, I got 2 calls back to the Northwest District within 7 days of each other.
Wow.
And took the one that was to Mount Olive in Seattle and was there for 5 years. Got a call back to be part of the ordained staff of the seminary in Fort Wayne. Did that for a few years, and then got another call back to the Northwest District to Hillsborough, and I've been here since 2008.
I see. So you've lived quite a few different places. How would you compare and contrast where you are now in Hillsborough with some of the other places you've been, for good or for ill?
Oregon is a really it's a great place to live in some ways, and a very frustrating place to live in others. If you're of more kind of a traditional Midwest mindset, this place can drive you crazy. Oregonians are very, very independent people. You cannot do anything. They have to everything is, you can't just say we're going to do this. You got to get everyone to buy in. Everyone's got to kind of do it together. It's an incredibly unchurched area compared to, say, other parts of the country. And in other parts, I especially noticed this when I was in Indiana, they kind of just assumed the general Christianity. And in the Northwest, the general assumption is unbelief. They're always surprised to find out you go to church or that you're connected to church. That's the least of that's the least obvious step. No, what do you mean you're not free on Sundays? What do you mean you have to work on a Sunday? I don't understand. Why would you go to church? And one thing I've noticed about Oregon, say in difference of Seattle, there can be very unfriendly to the faith. In Oregon, our unbelievers are quite as angry. So I meet unbelievers all the time. Go, oh, you're a pastor, so you help people. That's nice. It's not free, but I'm glad you're out there helping people. Whereas in Seattle, it's more like, oh, you're a pastor. I hate you. Get away from me. Don't speak to me.
Yeah.
Interesting place to live. Again, very independent people. We don't have a lot of multi-generational families. For the most part, people all came here from somewhere else. So a lot of people, the families all live elsewhere. You don't find a lot of, especially when it was more out in Seattle, you didn't find a lot of natives. You find a lot of people that came for whatever reason. That's slowly changing now because, a lot of the churches here were products of the 40s and 50s when they were planted. Now those people had kids. You get more multi-generational people now, but lots of people have come here from elsewhere. So you get a lot of first-generation Northwesterners.
I see. That makes sense. So now tell us a little bit more about Hillsborough. What do you think are the best things about the area?
Hillsborough is kind of cool. Hillsborough has a long, long history as an agricultural town that has just in probably the last 20 to 25 years started to get eclipsed as it's become more suburban. So when I first got here, some of my older members could take me around and go, well, this is where this granary used to be. This is where the birdseye trains would pull up and fill up with stuff. And I had an old guy, he's since passed on to the church triumphant. He was a farmer, and he would point out all the fields that he used to farm that are in housing developments and stuff. I used to farm that. And they're all very well established, either retail zones of restaurants or farmhouse or former farms that are in housing areas. We've got a substantial Intel presence in town, and Nike's headquarters isn't too far away. The Columbia Sportswear headquarters isn't too far away. So I've got a lot of members that now work at Intel, Nike, and Columbia, and places like that, and far fewer members have this connection to the old agricultural times. This used to be a big dairy farm area. The dairy farms predominantly have gone away and been replaced by nurseries for landscaping plants and things like that. And then lots and lots of Intel and Nike and other kind of high-tech stuff and other things like that. So new housing developments and apartments. There's this urban growth boundary here, so all of our living is, the new stuff at least, is kind of tight because there's only so much. The urban growth boundary means that there's a boundary beyond which the city doesn't provide services. So you can't just pop a neighborhood beyond the urban growth boundary. So when they build a neighborhood, the houses are all tightly packed because they're working with limited geography for where there's going to be electricity, power, and water. They just opened or started this huge 25-year plan community called South Hillsborough, which is all old farmland they're developing into kind of master plan communities. So it's kind of interesting. Old Hillsborough is, a lot of people lament that it's gone, and there's a whole bunch of stuff that wasn't here even when I moved here.
Yeah, that is an interesting transition to see it go, or to see the effects of it going from a more rural place to a suburban place. What do you think are the good things about Hillsborough? Like, what would you say, like, hey, this is one reason why you'd move to Hillsborough? You've mentioned the corporate headquarters there, so jobs are there. What are some other good things about that, the area?
It retains a tremendous sense of kind of the small town community. So downtown Hillsborough still has a farmer's market, in non-COVID times, obviously, but a Saturday morning farmer's market, summer. There's evening markets in the summers with food and all kinds of stuff going on. and everybody goes down there, and people, the shop owners. That part's kind of fun. It's still, it's pretty suburban, so kids can play outside and ride their bikes and do all that kind of stuff. And we sit, we're 50 miles from the beach, roughly. Easy access to Cannon Beach, easy access to the Oregon and Washington coasts, easy access east if you want to go skiing in the mountains, and incredibly easy access to Oregon wine country. So we're kind of well located for the stuff, for some pretty quintessential Oregon kind of things. You can get out into the country, you can ride your bike, you can get to the city incredibly easily. There's, you can still buy houses with yards out here. The older stuff, so our house sits on like a half acre because it was built a long time ago. So the older stuff sits on these really big lawns, and the new stuff are these postage stamps type lawns. So,
gotcha.
It's a fun place to be. We've got great libraries, great restaurants, and access to those sorts of things. Because since we're in the urban area, if you like coffee shops, if you like whatever kind of food you want, we've got lots of in and out in terms of people coming in and out. So a pretty vibrant community that way. The jobs bring in all sorts of new people from all around, not just the States, but internationally speaking. Intel brings in quite a few people. So great. Just it's good in that sense. Still a very challenging area. The cost of living is rising very quickly. Housing is becoming much harder to afford, especially if you're kind of just starting out.
Yeah, that makes sense. So beyond the increased costs of housing, what are some other disadvantages of being there?
It's depending on your circle of friends and stuff. Sometimes because Oregonians are so independent, and especially here, if you've got people that have been here for a long time, it's hard to get to know them because you're new. I was the new pastor for probably the first decade I was here.
That's hard.
Yeah, it's different. It's still, we've got people when they drop stuff, I have no idea what they're talking about. Well, that's so-and-so's second cousin. And I'm like, who's so-and-so? Well, she used to go to church here. When was that? Oh, 1973.
Of course, I remember that.
I get a lot. So I have to ask people, slow down. Tell me who is that again, and what's their connection. So you still get a lot of that, especially from I got this mix of people that are newer to the area that have come in for jobs and things, and then people that go way back and can tell me about Zion Lutheran Church used to be on another site. It moved to its present site in the early 70s. And I've still got a few members that were members at the original site. And they'll when they talk about the old times, it's almost unrecognizable in terms of what Hillsborough was like then compared to now.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, it's really fascinating because as you're talking about it, it sounds, as you mentioned, as you kind of alluded to, it's got this, all these new people coming in with all these small lots, but then you also have that atmosphere of, don't you know this person back in that used to go here in the 70s?
Yeah.
That's fascinating. Well, let's go on and talk about what it's like to be Lutheran there. You've already talked a bit about how you feel that they're much even though they're unchurched, the people in the area kind of have a more positive attitude towards pastors and Christianity. What else would you say to people who are curious about what it's like to be Lutheran in Oregon, and specifically Hillsborough?
Yeah, the interesting thing out here is, and this is true even amongst, say, the Lutherans, is there's not a lot of kind of like deep-seated Midwestern Lutheran identity type things. So you can't really talk in shorthand even to the Lutherans. You can't talk in shorthand in terms of liturgies and canonical controversies and power players. They don't know. I mean, I've had people that I was a delegate to the 2010 National Convention. I came back to give my report, and had people actually honestly asked me, why do we care what happened in Missouri? It's like, we're part of a larger church body. No, tell me more. I haven't heard this before. There's again, this kind of big independent streak where and I've got other people incredibly active in stuff and go and travel and do things and go to places, especially amongst my LWML ladies. They go to the conferences and interact with people all over the place, but there's still this kind of independent streak out here where connection to the national church body wasn't really well known. And so a general unfamiliarity with the American kind of Lutheran history and all these things that in other areas of the country you can almost talk in shorthand about and kind of name drop and stuff. Just, it doesn't happen out here. And that's refreshing at times and very frustrating at times. It's fun because you get to do a lot more teaching. You get to introduce people to a lot of stuff they've never heard or seen before. But everything that seems kind of normal for a lot of Lutherans, if you're trying to establish some of that, it might take you longer to do because you're introducing it to people for the first time. So, for instance, when I showed up here, they're like, well, Pastor, we really had a hymnal for 25 years. Okay, so they just recently published Lutheran Service Book. Did you want it? Yeah, that sounds good. Let's get that and learn it. Great. So let's try Matins. We've never heard this service before. So it took a long time to get some of that stuff kind of rolling. But it again, it's kind of an Oregon thing.
Yeah.
You've got the Lutherans out here were so far from kind of the headquarters and things back in the day that they had to kind of develop almost independently. And that's just continued. It makes for, even amongst kind of, when I talk to other Christians out here, the biggest challenge out here is people that even church people that really have never heard the gospel before.
Oh, really?
Even sitting in pews, they're still operating on kind of law and guilt and not under the gospel.
Oh, interesting. Huh.
There were some, when I first got here, it's just some, and I don't know where they got it, I don't know if it's a previous pastor or what, Lent would come around. Pastor, it has to be soup and bread. We can't eat anything. It's Lent. Nothing else at the suppers but soup and bread. That's what so-and-so said. Okay, but that's not really what Lent is about. It's, we've never heard this before. Tell us more. Interesting stuff like that.
Wow.
Or some of my members that in Bible class, you're talking about the gospel and the freeing nature of it. Paul's relation to the Old Testament and some of this, when he's kind of, in Galatians and things like that, and trying to, and comparing that to, say, evangelicalism or, say, Roman Catholicism, where they're still kind of seeped in guilt and the law and all these things you have to do. And I've had members kind of go, I wish I'd have heard this earlier. It would have saved me a whole lot of guilt over time. And no one really, it's just the articulation of the gospel. It shocks me that people have never really heard it as a proclamation. They've heard it as an offer. They've heard it as a kind of a conditional statement. If you do this, God will do this. It's that straight proclamation of God did it and you are that is kind of new for a lot of people.
That's really interesting. Anything else that you'd like to say about Lutherans as like people in the church, what it's like to be Lutheran there, before we move on to the question of what's it like in relation to the outside culture?
That's you can't come in and demand things. You've got to just go slow and teach a lot, and because relatively just kind of unfamiliarity with some aspect of traditional Lutheranism.
Yeah, so it sounds like catechizing is key then.
Yeah, very, very much so. And that's with the new people, with even lifelong members. I've never seen this before. What is this? That's Luther's Small Catechism. This is really cool.
Yes, it is really cool.
Yeah.
let's take a moment for a word from our sponsor. Folks, if you like podcasts, you will enjoy Audible. It's a service that gives you an audiobook to listen to each month of your choice from a large library. And they want to get you started with a free trial offer that includes an audiobook that you get to keep. So go to lutherancartographer.com/audible to get your free audiobook and start your free trial today. If you're looking for a book to check out, I'd recommend looking at Martin Luther's Table Topics, all sorts of wit, levity, but also good, solid theological insights from Luther as well. Check it out at lutherancartographer.com/audible. Let's get back to the show. All right. So then let's go on and talk about what it's like to relate to the outside culture. We've already talked a bit about it. Dive a little more in what it's like to be Lutheran as you vis-a-vis relating to other people that are outside the church.
And this is where I've got for a while before the changed ownership, I was actually the official chaplain of one of our local tap rooms.
Tap rooms? A brewery?
Brewery. It was tap. They didn't brew there, but so it was a tap.
Okay, gotcha.
Just
sorry, I'm not as hip with my brewing terminology as I should be.
I'll apologize to scientists listening, but my hobby is actually alcohol, and not in terms of drinking it to excess, but I like knowing how it's made, where it comes from, and the difference. I can talk about different varietals of wine, different whiskeys for scotches and bourbons and Irish and things like that. And so I got to know the owner of our local tap room, and then he found out I was a pastor. And luckily, he was not non-Lutheran, but a faithful church-going guy nonetheless. And so he was like, "Great, would you want to come in and do the opening prayer or benediction?" Or he didn't quite know the terminology to call it. Could you come give us some kind of opening for Veterans Day? Wow, yeah, not a problem. This guy was a former Marine and very proud of his time in the Marines, and so I came down. It was a much bigger thing than I thought. I was there to do my thing. He had a group there to play taps and present the flag. They sang the national anthem, led by a policeman in uniform. The mayor of Hillsborough was there doing a thing, and I kind of got to open it all. And he then asked me, "Hey, you're the official chaplain now." So I did that for many years. And that and a couple other gatherings there, I would come in and do stuff. And so then a lot of the regulars got to know me. And it was like, "Well, you're the only pastor we've ever talked to. And you drink beer, so this is great. Come join us and tell us more." That part's kind of fun. But I had to get to know the people first. Because there's still out here, they're friendlier than the unbelievers, like say in Seattle, but a guard still comes up where they're not, they're not too sure. And in general, their experience with other Christians has been either very judgmental or kind of law-based. And again, even the unbelievers have never heard the gospel. So it's sometimes hard to get to know or to talk to some of these people because of the guards they put up. The kind of preconceptions about Christianity are probably the hardest to overcome here because some of the stereotypes are so negative.
I see.
And we are competing. It's not like people are bored on Sundays waiting for a potluck to break out. There's tremendous amounts of things to do. If you want to use the line that I can't compete with the mountains. I can't compete with the ocean in that kind of a sense, or some of the recreational opportunities. But I've been able to use my kind of fondness for understanding the different kinds of beer and how they're made, or different kinds of wine and how they're made, as a way to meet people and talk to people. So I can go, it's like the Brewers Festival in Portland, and I'll end up at a table full of people I know just from the alcohol industry or people that go to these breweries, just people, none of them are church people. But I know them all just from that, or into wine country. And it's funny because now then they'll start to realize what I do, and then I start to get questions. Hey, tell me about such and such. And so it makes, that kind of thing makes, say like programmatic evangelism, some of these programs, impossible to do out here. You can't go door to door. You can't do these kinds of things people do elsewhere because you just can't talk to people like that. You almost have to get to know them first so they trust you.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's kind of like in sales, like if you're doing cold calling all the time, it's much harder than if they're kind of already warmed up, as it were.
Right.
And yeah, cold calling just, I don't think works in the Northwest for evangelism.
No. The cold calling doesn't work I don't think it works for business out here much either. But, and again, the Northwest, people are very independent and very wary.
Yeah.
I've heard it described as kind of almost a fake friendliness, where they're very polite to your face, but it ends right there.
Yeah, that's interesting to hear you say. Yeah, yeah, makes sense. So let's go on and talk about what it's like to raise a family there.
Yeah. Hillsborough is an easy place to raise a family. There's a lot of family kind of infrastructure things. Day camps in the summers for the kids, library programs, sports programs from recreational up to these traveling kind of semi-serious teams for, if your interest lies in that. Basketball, baseball, swimming, skiing, all of those kinds of things. The Hillsborough School District is fairly good, especially our high schools. I was very happy with my daughter's high school, where she went. Like I said, we do, again, in non-COVID times. When I first got here, VBS was pretty big, and then it's become harder to do VBS because now we're competing with stuff that used to not be. The city's doing a bunch of stuff it didn't do before. And so, the kids are all over programs. So raising a family here, again, suburban, so people have yards and the kids can be in their bikes and there's playgrounds and parks. And, generally, if you're most pretty stable employment. So, a lot of my Intel people have been here for years, going to be here for years. All my Nike people survived the job cuts there. I've had some people get they've, even with their positions have been eliminated, have gone on to other things in the same corporations. So, our daughter was in third grade. We moved here, and she's going to graduate college this June. So she was effectively semi-raised here, I guess.
I see.
And yeah, it seems to be a great place, and there's probably more stuff now for the younger kids than there was when we first got here. We have a preschool we operate here, so I see a few of the ones that come here a little bit, but there's a lot of kids in Hillsborough. It's a lot of families.
Great.
And stuff. It might be hard to be a Lutheran family, just because, again, the general assumption is you're nothing. So the schools don't carve out, like in other parts of the country, Wednesday night is still viewed as kind of a church night. And so there's no school programming on certain nights of the week. It's not the case here. Certain sports will have Sunday games. And then they're shocked. What do you mean you can't play? Or what do you mean you have a conflict? So they'll have Sunday games or other things scheduled without even thinking a thing about it. Because the church, it's not a factor in the culture.
Yeah, that makes sense. What educational options are there in the area so far as Lutheran education goes? You've mentioned your preschool. Are there are there elementary and high school options for parents that are interested in Lutheran options?
Yeah, we're actually part of the West Side Lutheran Schools Association, which operates Forest Hills Lutheran Christian School, which is about 6 miles from my congregation. That's K through 8. And then there's several Lutheran preschools at different congregations in the area. And then we've banded together for the one K through 8. At one point, we looked at doing a high school. We can no longer, at this point, afford the land to put a high school. There was a Lutheran high school in Portland, geographically speaking. That was too hard to get to from here. And, of course, we all know the tragic case of Concordia University, which just closed last year. And I was an adjunct professor of theology there for about the last decade.
Yeah, I'm very, very sorry to hear about that. One of our early guests was one of the regents, and he had just come on as they had to make that decision. Pretty brutal.
Yeah, it was absolutely brutal. And I spent a decade again introducing kids that had never opened a Bible to the Bible. That's New Testament and Old Testament. Tremendous. What a great bunch of kids that place had. I've got no complaints about my time there whatsoever. They've treated all the adjuncts like full-blown colleagues. We were invited to everything, included in meetings, treated incredibly well, and got the opportunity to, teach these kids and help them look at the Bible and see stuff they didn't know was there and encounter things for the first time. And that was a tremendous, great privilege that I had to do that. And I talked to other former adjuncts. We all miss it.
Yeah.
Enjoyed it.
Let's turn now to current events, or somewhat current events. People have heard a lot about Portland in the news for the riots and the Antifa activity. What was it really like there, and how much did it spill over into the suburbs?
It didn't spill over to the suburbs at all. It was, in fact, a lot of that activity was really limited to the same kind of few blocks in downtown Portland. It's kind of, there's been a couple things kind of expanding out into the Pearl District lately, but most of that stuff this summer was right kind of downtown in the park blocks near some stuff, or the other side of the river in another part of the city. And so we obviously talked about it a lot. Sometimes we joked about it a little bit. And I'll tell you, the one effect, though, is even amongst the people here that used to go to downtown Portland for shopping or to go out to eat, they pretty much all just stopped going down there for the most part. Now, most of that's COVID related as well, because we were shut down pretty hard for a while. But mostly it's almost kind of, oh no, we don't go down there anymore type stuff. It's kind of, those kind of rights things haven't really affected us, except in the sense that everyone that's leaving the city is coming out towards us. So houses go up for sale and sell very quickly out here now. And some of the folks that are kind of trying to get out of that are coming out to the suburbs. And some of the businesses are moving out here. So some of the three of the breweries are not abandoning downtown. They're expanding, and they're expanding out our direction. And more restaurants, more of that kind of stuff is all kind of rolling out this way. We're the county seats. We have the county courthouse and things right in our downtown area. But we didn't see picketing or protests or anything of the riotous nature at all. So the stuff on the news kind of made it paint like the whole area was going crazy, and it really wasn't.
I see.
It was a very limited geographic area downtown. And I feel bad for anyone that was kind of caught up down there that just wants to live their life and do their business, because it's become almost impossible. But that hasn't kind of rolled out our way at all.
All right.
And it hasn't been, most importantly, it's just kind of been very well confined.
Well, let's talk about the other thing that you mentioned, and that's COVID. And what has the response in Oregon been like? Has it been more draconian like California, or more free like South Dakota?
Oh, we are way, way more like California. We got shut down cold. Almost a year ago, we had the stay-at-home order.
Just 2 weeks.
Yeah. 2 weeks to stem the tide. And, I joke about that a lot. I talk about, we're now in week 53 of 2 weeks to stem the tide. So we went from, Bible studies, services, and all the stuff to nothing. And we didn't have the infrastructure kind of here to stream or to do any of this kind of stuff. I kind of thought for a couple, what do I have on hand? I've got an old DSLR that can take video. I go buy a mic, a shotgun mic that sits on the hot flash mount. And so I can do something, I can edit that for YouTube purposes. I couldn't stream it or anything like that. And so I had to learn, and I still don't know, but I learned enough to shoot and edit and then post at least the readings and the sermon on YouTube. And did that. And then a few months in, we were allowed to reopen it at no more than 15 or 20. It was an incredibly tiny number. We could reopen. So we reopened, of course, but I still had to then shoot and edit and do these videos because people still didn't want to come. And so we're back. We're still masked, we're still social distanced, but we're singing again and all the stuff that had been kind of cut down. But I'm still having to then also shoot and edit and post and get these videos out every week because our vaccine rollout's been less than optimal. So people are still, not everyone is, more and more people are starting to come back now, but some people are still waiting for vaccines and finding appointments hard to get.
Wow. That must have been exhausting. I'm sorry to hear. So
it's more time. Doing the videos is harder than it looks.
It really is, yeah. All right, so let's turn to happier things. Let's talk about what things you'd recommend people see and do, assuming that things are back open again. What activities, places to eat, things to do? What would you recommend to, say you had a friend coming into town?
All right, so if you're coming out here, there's a couple. There's an old place called Helvetia Tavern. It's been here for decades. If you remember the show, I forgot the name of the show, but it was that Grimm. Show Grimm was set in Portland. All the werewolves stayed at the Helvetia Tavern, so it was in a couple episodes because the werewolves hung out there. But it's a burger that will take 15 years off your life, but it's worth it.
All right. It sounds like a good burger.
It's a good burger. The coast, if you're a big history buff, we've got all the Lewis and Clark stuff because they kind of ended their journey out here. If you're going to stick in close, Multnomah Falls, Columbia River Gorge, all the myriad of things in Portland. We've got Japanese gardens, Chinese gardens, the Pittock Mansion, Oregon Historical Museum, and then Oregon wine country. So just within an hour's drive of here are too many wineries to mention, where this stuff is grown, processed, and produced kind of all on site. You can talk to winemakers. Great Chardonnays, great Pinot Noirs, Pinot Gris, all kinds of other varietals for Oregon wine country. We have some of the best beer in the world is brewed around here. Oregon breweries are just amazing. Hiking, camping, the natural beauty here is unrivaled. The Oregon coast is simply amazing. It's not like a Southern California beach. There's lots of rocks. It's more scenic stuff. You can whale watch. Our water is too cold to swim in, so it's wetsuit surfing year round here. In the summers you might wade in up to your ankles, but that water gets cold in a hurry otherwise. But the natural beauty is undiminished. Hiking, bicycling, mountain biking, in the winter skiing. Oregon's got an ocean. We've got mountains. Drive over to Bend and you can do kind of all the Central Oregon mountain stuff. Tremendous. We've got Crater Lake way down south. All kinds of history, Native American history. Again, the Lewis and Clark stuff if you want to see that. We do have quite a bit of touristy stuff, a lot of vacation stuff. Portland's history is very unique. People used to get shanghaied in the Portland bars. They'd be given these drinks that would knock them out, and there were little trap doors in some of the bars and they'd fall, and they'd wake up and they were already at sea as crew on some ship.
Wow.
Coming back today. So just tremendous amounts of things like that. All the culture you can get out of the major metropolitan area. The traveling Broadway style shows, the operas, the concerts, the local food scene. If you're a real big foodie, the Portland food scene is almost unmatched. Lots of famous restaurants. Our food cart scene is amazing. Portland's got this happy hour thing that I hope comes back after COVID, where it's not just drink specials, it's the food specials you go for. It's amazing food for not that much money at these places. And so you can try all kinds of things, and it's not usual happy hour foods. It's taken up a few notches. So lots of great stuff like that. So in the midst of a very kind of challenging place to be Lutheran, there's all kinds of stuff going on, and tremendous opportunities to tell people, to proclaim the gospel to people that have never heard it. But yeah, no, it's a great place to visit. Like the West Coast, it's a little more expensive than other places in the country, but that's just how it is out here.
Yeah, that's the price you pay. All right. So now, Pastor Knepper, as we start to close out the podcast, I want to make sure to give you the opportunity to point our listeners where you'd like. Your church's website, places to follow you online. Where would you like to point our listeners?
We have a website, a Facebook page, and of course, the YouTube channel. The YouTube channel is just Zion Lutheran Church, Hillsboro, Oregon. And all that we put on the YouTube channel is just me doing the sermons and the readings for any given week. And then our Facebook page gets links to those videos plus other things that are going on. Again, Zion Lutheran Church, Hillsboro, Oregon, to find us. And then I think the website is, I don't run the website, it's zionhillsboro.org. And that's probably, I'd say, the least updated thing of it. I handle the Facebook and YouTube, so those get updated a lot more often. I'm not sure, I don't do the website, so that gets updated. But anything that I put on Facebook goes on the website immediately, kind of direct. So, but we're there. If you're ever in Hillsboro, our services are 10:30 a.m. on Sunday mornings. And once COVID's kind of done, our full slate of activities will be back up. And if you're in the Hillsboro area, our preschool cannot be beat. People love it. We get, in fact, registration's open right now for next year, and it's already starting to fill. And if you're in the area and need education, Forest Hills Lutheran Christian School, tremendous. Their principal, Mike Sheeman, just won Lutheran Educator, Lutheran Administrator of the Year. So they're doing great things over there.
Great. Dear listener, you can find links to all this stuff that Pastor Knepper just mentioned. Check out the show notes page. It'll be at lutherancartographer.com/63. Pastor Knepper, thank you so much for your time today. What are your parting thoughts for our listeners?
Well, I tell you what, I've talked a lot about the gospel, and the gospel is this: Christ died for you. God has made you his child. You are redeemed.
Amen. Thank you again. God's peace.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Lutheran Cartographer. For more about the things that we talked about today, including links to all those great things that Pastor Knepper mentioned, check out the show notes page. It's at lutherancartographer.com/63. I encourage you to check out that Audible offer to go ahead and get a free audiobook of your choice, even if you decide not to continue with their service. You can start out at lutherancartographer.com/audible. Be sure you're subscribed to the show on iTunes or on Stitcher or on your favorite podcast app. That way you don't miss an episode. And until next time, I'm Nicholas Weber. Thanks for listening. I'll talk to you soon.